Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. The time is 12:57 p.m. on Friday, the 27th of February 2026. I've had a busy day watching various YouTube videos and being busy in the comment section. Some of the commentary is just astounding and evil and vicious, but I've just come off the neurogenomics podcast by Dr. Nikolai Rajek, and I must say he's a wonderful human being. He really is. And the majority of the people in the comments section are wonderful human beings. So that lifted my mood up after the ugliness that I saw this morning and yesterday. Promoting, they're doing studies now on ivermectin and fenbendazole, I think it's called, combined to help with cancers. So I took particular interest because I've got only a little spot of skin cancer flaring up, but I feel like my health's deteriorated in the last few months, and the Bactroban antibiotic that the doctors gave me at the Martyrs not bringing that cyst up, so I know that I'm going to end up having to have that cut out eventually if it keeps growing or if it starts presenting other problems. I think that's what I'm worried about deep down, is that it was basically left and I was put on a waiting list, and they thought that the antibiotic cream might draw it out, but no, it hasn't budged in the slightest. So I'm not going to worry too much about it because I've survived lots of other skin cancers. I look like a patchwork quilt all over my back and scar tissue on my hands, although you can't really see that anymore. Oh yeah, you can, but it's healed remarkably well, and I've healed from many things. But yes, it said some people in the comments section of today's video said that ivermectin is not good to have if you've got difficulties with your liver, and I have a non-alcoholic fatty liver after 15 years of heavy psych meds, and admittedly my many years of very poor diet because of my constant craving for fish and chips, McDonald's, pizza, Kentucky Fried. Well, mental patients who are struggling with their mental health tend to go for a quick fix of fast food, and when I was on the Abilify and the Zyprexa, it made me extremely hungry, so I would just grab whatever was the quickest to obtain, which meant that my diet was heavily compromised, and the weight gain blew out too. At my worst, I blew out to 103 kilos, and my GP actually set me, that monstrous, treacherous GP I had that left me basically to die in 2022. But this was back, I'd been with her for about 10 years. So anyway, back probably around about 2013 or 2014, she sent me to a dietitian. It must have been, no, it was prior to that, because I wasn't that fat then. The weight had come into some kind of equilibrium. Well, anywho, she sent me to a dietitian, and the dietitian at the hospital was a man, and he asked me to do a little chart of what I was eating on a daily basis, and I was honest, because no point going to a doctor or specialist if you're going to lie about what you're eating, etc. And then he looked at my daily intake of calories and the kinds of things I was eating. And I remember he looked at me like absolute amazement. He said, you should be at least 20 or 30 kilos heavier than you actually are. He said, I can't understand it, why you're not actually fatter given what you've been eating. I said, well, I drink a lot of tea and I dance, and I think that's why I'm piling weight on now, is because I haven't been dancing since I fell out with an entire group of people in the Brisbane music scene. Awful it was, evil and awful. But anywho, so what have I been doing? I've been carbiciding. But to be fair, I've been eating healthier food. Like, I just had some very delicious baba ganoush I made last night, and then I had some very naughty and delicious but fattening chocolate. And I had a little piece of coconut from the coconut I bought for the birds. Actually, I had some of that. So I've been grazing today, but the only thing unhealthy was the chocolate. But then on the other hand, chocolate in moderation is actually quite good for you. And I've started buying only Whittaker's chocolate because I saw a video and all the rubbish they're putting in the so-called good quality chocolate. Now it's not even real chocolate anymore, and I thought, well, that's a waste of money if all you're eating is crap and you think you're buying something, a luxury item, and it's actually full of rubbish. So I've gone back to the Whittaker's brand from New Zealand because I know it's a good quality chocolate. However, it costs twice as much as what you pay for the ordinary Cadbury, so I have to limit myself because of the expense of it, which long term will be better for my figure. Won't be able to indulge as I have been indulging. So that's enough about that. But yes, I shared the video from Dr. Mikolaj Rajak because I can see he is genuinely wanting to assist people to find alternative means to sustain our bodies in this post-COVIDian debacle we find ourselves in. I personally didn't have the COVID vaccines, but I'm fairly certain that I am sickened by shedding symptoms, which is unavoidable because, you know, sooner or later you have to go out into the public and mix amongst other humans. So I'm concerned that I may have built up some spike protein pathology, either from catching COVID in October 23 or from the shedding from being out in public every weekend, dancing and joyously, you know, engaging with other humans. And I guess the shedding symptoms would have been a lot worse if I'd been engaging in sexual, you know, activities as well. So I guess that's one thing that I've mitigated by being an asexual celibate, is I've avoided that level of exposure to other people's cumulative spike protein. So yes, I'm viewing this ivermectin fenbendazole studies with interest, because I think that is quite a few anecdotal cases where it's actually healed people with, you know, stage 3 and stage 4 cancers. And I think it may be, I mean, I'm not a doctor, they're still studying it, of course, beneficial to those people who have been adversely affected by the spike protein from the COVID interferences. Just put it delicately there. And I guess it'll just also depend on individual people's level of health and diet and mental health and attitude, because if you're meant to stay alive, people, life finds a way. I'm living proof of that. Shouldn't actually be here, given all the attacks on my body since early childhood. So on a happy note, the sun's come out. I wanted to put the birdies out, but it's very windy out there, but the sun's come out now. And I'm taking all this information that I gather from various doctors and scientists on YouTube. It has been a great resource for me, especially as I don't have a GP that I can trust with my body, mind and spirit anymore. I'm gathering as much information as I can and trying to work out which will be the next best course of action should my health deteriorate significantly in the next 12 months or so. The other thing I really should be doing is digital detoxing, because I'm getting a lot of pain in my jaw and gums, and I actually, maybe I'm paranoid, but I actually worry that it's too much EMF radiation exposure, because I'm on this iPhone, even when I'm not reading stories to you on YouTube and uploading it, but I'm on it from the moment I wake up in the morning till the moment I go to bed at night. And I'm cognizant that it's quite a bit of exposure. It's probably what's caused me to have problems with my gums and teeth. Maybe not. Maybe I'm lacking in iodine. But I do take vitamin D every morning and my folic acid, which I've been taking for many years because I was diagnosed in 2002 with hyperhomocystinemia, which only CEOs of very big companies actually get that illness from the high levels of executive stress. That's how much stress I was put under, being threatened on a daily basis with my 2 young daughters. So they said I have to be on it for life, so I keep taking it, but I'm actually wondering if maybe it's time to just stop taking that and see how I go. But then the hyperhomocystinemia is comes with a risk of stroke, people of Earth, so that's why I was told to take folic acid, and I only take 2.5 milligrams each morning, that with the vitamin D. Anyway, what can I say, people of Earth? Like every other human on this planet, we're staying alive, sometimes just as an act of rebellion and defiance against those sorts of entities, human or non-human, that wanted me dead. But yes, my gums are really, and my teeth are really sensitive today. Even drinking that cold water is, they're all zinging, so I don't feel all that bloody well, quite frankly. Anyway, we're up to chapter 5, Fakirs and Fiestas. The Prince of Darkness is a gentleman, Shakespeare, King Lear. Let's see how long a chapter this is. Fairly long, so I may have to break it up if I get too tired. We'll see how we go, people of Earth. Sometimes once I'm immersed in the story, I get terribly excited in this alternate reality presented from words on a page. I forget that I'm tired and carry on to completion. So we'll see how we go. It was always during the late spring that my collection of animals swelled to a point where even Mother grew occasionally alarmed, for it was then that everything was arriving and hatching, and baby animals are, after all, easier to acquire than adults. It was also the time when the birds, newly arrived to nest and rear their young, were harried by the local gentry with guns, in spite of the fact that it was out of season. Everything was grist to their mill, these towny sportsmen. Excuse me. For whereas the peasants would stick to the so-called game birds, thrushes, blackbirds and the like, the hunters from the town would blast everything that flew. You would see them returning triumphantly, weighed down with guns and bandoliers of cartridges, their game bags full of a sticky, bloody, feathery conglomeration of anything from robins to redstarts, from nuthatches to nightingales. Dear Goddess, I don't know what's the matter with me. It was fine before I started reading. So in the spring, my room and that portion of the veranda set aside for the purpose always had at least half a dozen cages and boxes containing gape-mouthed baby birds, or birds that I had managed to rescue from the sportsmen, and which were recuperating with makeshift splints on wings or legs. What you doing, quiet little boys? Oh, my little Kermie and my little Bo. It's so sweet, the two of them. I really wish I could put them out in the garden because they're happier in the garden. Maybe later. Oh no, later it's predicted to rain. Well, we'll just hope for the best. I know. Hoping for the best, people of Earth. Story of my life. The only good thing about the spring slaughter was that it gave me a pretty good idea of what birds were to be found in the island. I think he means on the island. Anyway, semantics. Realising I could not stop the killing, I at least turned it to good account. I would track down the brave and noble Nimrods and ask to see the contents of their game bags. I would then make a list of all the dead birds, and by pleading, save the lives of those that only had been wounded. That had only been wounded. It was by this means that Hiawatha came into my possession. I had spent an interesting and energetic morning with the dogs. We had been up early and out in the olive groves while everything was still dawn chilly and misted with dew. I had found this an excellent time for collecting insects, for the coldness made them lethargic and unwilling to fly, and thus more easily acquired. I had obtained 2 butterflies and a moth new to my collection, 2 unknown beetles and 17 locusts, which I collected to feed my baby birds with. By the time the sun was well up in the sky and had gathered some heat, we had unsuccessfully chased a snake and a green lizard, milked Agati's goat, unbeknownst to her, into a collecting jar as we were all thirsty, and dropped in on my old shepherd friend Yanni. I really like the name Yanni. It means John. It just sounds so much nicer than John, doesn't it? Yanni. Who provided us with some bread and fig cake and a straw hat full of wild strawberries to sustain us. We made our way down to a small bay where the dogs lay panting, or crab hunted in the shallows, while I spread-eagled like a bird in the warm, transparent water, lay face downwards, holding my breath and drifting over the landscape of the sea. When it grew close to midday and my stomach told me lunch would be ready, I dried off in the sun, the salt forming in patches on my skin like a silky pattern of delicate lace, and started off home. As we meandered through the olive groves, shady and cool as a well between the great trunks, I heard a series of explosions in the myrtle groves away to the right. I moved over to investigate, keeping the dogs close to me, for Greek hunters were jumpy and would, in most cases, shoot before stopping to identify what they were shooting at. The danger applied to me too, so I talked loudly to the dogs as a precaution. "Here, Roger, here. Good boy. Puke. Whittle, Whittle, come here. Here. That's a good boy. Puke, come back." I spotted the hunter sitting on a giant olive root and mopping his brow, and as soon as I knew he had seen us, I approached him. He was a plump, white little man with a moustache like an elongated black toothbrush over his prim little mouth, and dark glasses covered eyes as round and as liquid as a bird's. He was dressed in the height of fashion for hunting: polished riding boots, new breeches and white cord, an atrociously cut hacking jacket in mustard and green tweed, beset with so many pockets that it looked like the eaves of a house hung with swallows' nests. His green Tyrolean hat, with its bunch of scarlet and orange feathers, was tilted to the back of his curly head, and he was mopping his ivory brow with a large silk handkerchief that smelled strongly of cheap cologne. "Calimera, Calimera," he greeted me, beaming and puffing. "Welcome. Whoof, it's a hot day, isn't it? I agreed and offered him some of the strawberries that remained in my hat. He looked at them rather apprehensively, as if fearing they were poisoned, took one delicately in his plump fingers, and smiled his thanks as he popped it into his mouth. I got the impression that he had never before eaten strawberries out of a hat with his fingers and was not quite sure about the rules. I had a good morning's hunt, he said proudly, pointing to where his game bag lay, bulging ominously, blood bespattered and feathery. From the mouth of it protruded the wing and head of a lark, so blasted and mangled it was difficult to identify. Would he, I inquired, mind if I examined the contents of his bag? No, of course not, he said. You will see, I'm quite a marksman. I did see. His bag consisted of 4 blackbirds, a golden oriole, 2 thrushes, 8 larks, of 14 sparrows, 2 robins, a stonechat and a wren. The last, he admitted, was a bit small, but very sweet to eat if cooked with paprika and garlic. But this, he said proudly, is the best. Be careful, because it's not quite dead. He handed me a blood-stained handkerchief and I unwrapped it carefully. Inside, gasping and exhausted, a great hard seal of blood on its wing, was a hoopoe. That is not, of course, good to eat, he explained to me, but the feathers will look good in my hat. I had long wanted to possess one of these splendid, heraldic-looking birds, with their fine crests and their salmon pink and black bodies, and I had searched everywhere for their nests so that I could hand rear some young ones. Now here was a live hoopoe in my hands, or, to be more exact, a half-dead one. I examined it carefully and found that it in fact looked worse than it was, for all it had was a broken wing, and this was a clean break as far as I could judge. The problem was how to get my proud fat hunter to part with it. Suddenly I had an inspiration. I started by saying that it made me feel bitter and annoyed that my mother was not there at the moment, for she was, I explained, a world-famous authority on birds. Mother could with difficulty distinguish between a sparrow and an ostrich. She had, in fact, written a definitive work on birds for the hunters of England. To prove it, I produced from my collecting bag a battered and much consulted copy of A Bird Book for the Pocket by Edmund Sanders, a book I was never without. My fat friend was most impressed. He turned over the pages, muttering appreciative po-po-po-pos to himself. My mother, he said, must be a remarkable woman to have written such a book. The reason I wished she was there at this moment, I went on, was because she had never seen a hoopoe. She had seen every other bird on the island, including the rare kingfisher. To prove it, I took the scalp of a dead kingfisher I had found and used it as a talisman in my collecting bag and laid it in front of him. He was struck with this little skull cap of bright blue feathers. They were much prettier than hoopoe feathers when one considered it, I said. It took a little time for the thought to penetrate, but I soon had him begging that I would take the hoopoe to my mother in exchange for the scrap of velvety blue feathers. I put on a nice display of astonished reluctance, fading into grovelling gratitude, put the wounded hoopoe inside my shirt and hurried home with it, leaving my hunter friend sitting on his olive root, looking like Tweedledum and trying happily to fix the kingfisher's scalp to his hat with a pin. When I got home, I took my new acquisition to my room and examined it carefully. To my relief, its long, curved, rubbery beak, like a slender scimitar, was intact. For without the use of this delicate organ, I knew that the bird could not survive. Apart from exhaustion and fright, the only thing wrong with it appeared to be a broken wing. The break was high in the upper wing, and on investigating it gently, I found that it was a clean break, the bone having been snapped like a dry twig and not smashed and splintered like a green one. I carefully cut away the feathers with my dissecting scissors, washed the scab of blood and feathers away with warm water and disinfectant, splintered the bone with 2 curved slivers of bamboo, and bound the whole thing up tight. It was quite a professional job, and I was proud of it. The only trouble was that it was too heavy, and when I released the bird, it fell over on its side, dragged down by the weight of the splint. After some experiment, I managed to make a much lighter splint out of bamboo and sticking plaster, and with a thin strip of bandage, bound the whole thing firmly to the bird's side. Then, with a pipette, I gave it a drink of water and placed it in a cardboard box covered with a cloth to recover. I called the hoopoe Hiawatha, and the family greeted its arrival in our midst with unqualified approval, for they liked hoopoes, and moreover it was the only exotic bird species they could recognise at 20 paces. Finding things to eat for Hiawatha kept me very busy during the first few days of her convalescence, for she was a finicky patient, would only eat live food and was choosy about that. I had to release her on the floor of my room and throw the titbits at her. The succulent grasshoppers, as green as jade, locusts with plump thighs, their wings as crisp as biscuits, small lizards and tiny frogs. These she would grab and bang vigorously on any suitable hard surface, a chair or bed leg, the edge of the door or table, until she was sure that they were dead. It's a bit like the kookaburras do the same thing. Thwack with their beaks when I give them chicken. It's cute. It freaked me out the first few times, but then I realised that must be what they do to all the creatures that they hunt and collect. They smash them with their beaks. Then a couple of quick gulps, and she would be ready for the next course. One day when the family had all assembled in my room to watch Hiawatha feed, I gave her an 8-inch slow worm. With her delicate beak, her finely banded crest, and her beautiful pink and black colour scheme, she looked a very demure bird. Even more so because she generally kept her crest folded back against her skull. But now she took one look at the slow worm and changed into a predatory monster. Her crest rose and spread itself, quivering like a peacock's tail. Her throat puffed out. She uttered a strange little purring grunt deep in her throat and hopped rapidly and purposely towards where the slow worm was dragging along its burnished copper body, oblivious of its fate. Hiawatha paused and, with her splintered and her good wings spread out, she leaned forward and pecked at the slow worm, a rapid rapier thrust of her beak, so quick it was difficult to see. The slow worm at the blow writhed into a lashing figure of 8, and I saw to my amazement that Hiawatha's first blow had completely crushed the reptile's eggshell fragile skull. "Good Lord," said Larry, equally amazed. "Now that's what I call a useful bird to have around the house. A few dozen of those around, and we wouldn't have to worry about snakes." "I don't think they could tackle a big one," said Leslie judiciously. "Well, I wouldn't mind if they just cleaned up the small ones," said Larry. "That'd be a start." "You talk as if the house were full of snakes, dear," put in Mother. "It is," answered Larry austerely. "What about the Medusa wig of snakes Leslie found in the bath?" "They were only water snakes," said Mother. "I don't care what they were. If Jerry's going to be allowed to fill the bath with snakes, then I shall carry a brace of hippos around with me." "Ooh, look at it now," squeaked Margot. Hiawatha had delivered a number of rapid blows down the length of the slow worm's body, and she was now picking up the still writhing length and dashing it onto the floor rhythmically, as the fisherman would beat an octopus against the rocks to make it tender. After a time, there was no discernible life left in the body. Hiawatha stared down at it, pressed up, head on one side. Satisfied, she seized the head in her beak, slowly gulping and throwing her head back. She swallowed it inch by inch. In a couple of minutes, there was only half an inch of tail protruding from the corner of her beak. Hiawatha never grew really tame, and she was always nervous, but she learned to tolerate human beings in fairly close proximity to her. Bit like my birdie boys, isn't it? You're not ready to go around the neighbourhood on the perch like Charlie used to. No, 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 no. Maybe one day though. Yes. They're both snoozing and they're looking at me like this because I wake them up. When she had settled down, I used to take her out onto the veranda where I kept various other birds and let her walk about in the shade of the grapevine. It was not unlike a hospital ward, for at that time I had 6 sparrows recovering from concussion brought about by being caught in breakback mouse traps set by peasant boys, 4 blackbirds and a thrush who had been caught by baited fishhooks set in the olive groves. Oh, that's just nasty. Bloody hell. And a half a dozen assorted birds, ranging from a tern to a magpie, recovering from the effects of gunshot wounds. Also nasty. In addition, there was a nest of young goldfinches and an almost fledged greenfinch, which I was hand-rearing. Hiawatha did not seem to mind the proximity of these other birds, but she kept herself to herself, pacing slowly up and down the flagstones, brooding with half-closed eyes, aloofly aristocratic, like a beautiful queen imprisoned in some castle. At the sight of a worm, frog or grasshopper, of course, her behaviour would become anything but queenly. About a week after Hiawatha had entered my avian clinic, I set off one morning to meet Spiro. This was a sort of daily ritual. He would blow loud blasts on his horn when he reached the edge of the property, which was some 50 acres in extent, and I and the dogs would tear through the olive groves to intercept him somewhere along the drive. Panting for breath, I would burst out of the olive groves, the dogs barking hysterically in front of me, and we would hold up the great gleaming Dodge, its hood back, Spiro in his peaked cap, crouching, massive, brown and scowling behind the wheel. I would take my place on the running board, holding tight to the windscreen, and Spiro would drive on, the dogs in an ecstasy of mock fierceness, trying to bite the front tyres. The conversation every morning was also a ritual that never varied. "Good mornings, Master Jerry's," Spiro would say. "How's are yous?" Having ascertained that I had not developed any dangerous disease during the night, he would inquire after the rest of us. "And how's the families?" he would ask. "How's your mother's? How's Master Larry's and Master Leslie's and Missy Margot's?" By the time I had reassured him as to their health, we would have reached the villa, where he would lumber from one member of the family to the other, checking as to whether my information was correct. I was rather bored by the daily, almost journalistic interest Spiro took in the family's health, as if they were royalty. But he persisted as if some awful fate might have overtaken them during the night. One day, in a fit of devilry, I told him, in response to his earnest inquiry, that they were all dead, and the car swerved off the drive and crashed straight into a large oleander bush, showering Spiro and myself with pink blossoms and nearly knocking me off the running board. "Gollies, Master Jerrys, you mustn't say things like that," he roared, pounding the wheel with his fist. "You makes me scarce when you say things like that. You makes me sweat. Don't you ever say that again." This particular morning, having reassured himself as to the health of each member of the family, he lifted a small strawberry basket covered with a fig leaf from the seat by his side. "Here," he said, scowling at me. "I've got presents for yous." I took the leaf off the basket. Inside crouched two naked and repulsive-looking birds. I was enchanted and thanked Spiro profusely, for they were baby jays, as I could see by their sprouting wing feathers. I had never had jays before. I was so pleased with them that I took them with me when I went to my studies with Mr. Kralewski. That was the advantage of having a tutor who was as mad about birds as I was. Together we spent an exciting and interesting morning trying to teach them to open their mouths and feed, when we should have been committing the glittering pageantry of English history to memory. But the babies were singularly stupid and refused to accept either Kralewski or myself as a substitute mother. I took them back home at lunchtime and during the afternoon tried to get them to behave sensibly, but without success. They would only take food if I forced their beaks open and pushed it down their throats with my finger, a process that they strongly objected to, as well they might. Eventually, having shoved enough down them to keep them more or less alive, I left them in their strawberry basket on the veranda and went to fetch Hiawatha, who had shown a marked preference for having her food served on the veranda rather than in the privacy of my room. I placed her on the flagstones and started to throw her the grasshoppers I had caught for her. Just one moment, need more water. I think it's going to rain soon. It's feeling very oppressive and humid all of a sudden, like a giant metal weight has been, drank it all by the gods, has been pressed down on us. Be right back, just get another bottle of water. Oh wow, who has done most action, little boy? You is. What about you, Peggy? You're a beautiful little boy. Beautiful little boys. Singing a beautiful song this morning. I heard you singing. Oh, just bumped my elbow in that bloody vice. I've brought in the remains of my chocolate because I've decided I'm going to eat it. Life's meant to be pleasurable, and I'm a bit tired. I'm a bit tired, people of Earth. What can I say? But the babies were singularly stupid and refused to accept either Kralewski or myself as a substitute mother. Poor little things. Always taken away from their mother. It's amazing any of his birds survived. But anyway. That's a projection on my part. I took them back home at lunchtime, and during the afternoon tried to get them to behave sensibly, but without success. They would only take food if I forced their beaks open and pushed it down their throats with my finger, a process that they strongly objected to, as well they might. Eventually, having shoved enough down them to keep them more or less alive, I left them in their strawberry basket on the veranda and went to fetch Hiawatha, who had shown a marked preference for having her food served on the veranda rather than in the privacy of my room. I placed her on the flagstones and started to throw her the grasshoppers I had caught for her. She hopped eagerly, snapped up the first, killed it and swallowed it with almost indecent haste. As she sat there gulping, looking rather like an elderly, angular dowager duchess who had swallowed a sorbet the wrong way at a ball, the two baby jays lolling their heads, bleary-eyed, over the edge of their basket, caught sight of her. Immediately they started to call wheezily, open-mouthed, their heads wobbling from side to side, like two very old men looking over a fence. Hiawatha put up her crest and stared at them. "Yes, Kermie." I did not expect her to take much notice, for she always ignored the other baby birds when they called out to be fed. But she hopped nearer the basket and surveyed the baby jays interestedly. I threw her a grasshopper, and she grabbed it, killed it, and then, to my complete astonishment, hopped up to the basket and crammed the insect down the gaping maw of one of the jays. Both babies wheezed and screamed and flapped their wings in delight, and Hiawatha looked as startled as I was at what she had done. "Oh, there you are, beautiful boy. You having your sunflower seeds? Good boy. Good boy." He loves his sunflower seeds. I threw her another grasshopper, and she killed it and fed the other baby. After this, I would feed Hiawatha in my room and then bring her down onto the veranda periodically, where she would act the part of mother to the baby jays. She never showed any other maternal feelings for the babies. She would not, for example, seize the little encapsulated blobs of excreta from the babies' behinds when they cocked them over the edge of the nest. This task of cleaning was left to me. Once she had fed the babies so that they stopped screaming, she lost all interest in them. I concluded it must be something in the timbre of their call that aroused her maternal instincts, for although I experimented with the other babies I possessed, and they screamed their lungs out, she took no notice at all. Gradually the baby jays decided to let me feed them, and as soon as they stopped calling at her appearance, Hiawatha took no further notice of them. It was not simply that she ignored them, she seemed unaware of their existence. When her wing had healed, I removed the splint and found that, although the bone had set well, the wing muscles had become weak with lack of use, and Hiawatha tended to favour the wing, always walking rather than flying. To make her exercise it, it's too close to my eyeballs. To make her exercise it, I used to take her down into the olive groves and throw her up into the air so that she was forced to use her wings to make a safe landing. Gradually she started to take short flights as the wings strengthened, and I began to think that I would be able to release her when she met her death. What's the matter, handsome boy? I had taken her out onto the veranda one day, and while I was feeding my assortment of babies, Hiawatha flew, or rather glided down to a nearby olive grove to practice her flying and make a light snack on some daddy longlegs that were just hatching. I was absorbed in feeding the babies and was not taking much notice when suddenly I heard hoarse, despairing cries from Hiawatha. I vaulted over the veranda rail and raced through the trees, but I was too late. A large, mangy, battle-scarred feral cat was standing with the limp form of the hoopoe in his mouth, his great green eyes staring at me over her pink body. I gave a shout and ran forward. The cat turned with oil-like fluidity and leapt into the myrtle bushes, carrying Hiawatha's body with him. I gave chase, but once the cat had reached the tangled sanctuary of the myrtles, it was impossible to track him down. I returned, furious and upset, to the olive grove, where all that was left to remind me of Hiawatha were some pink feathers and a few drops of blood scattered like rubies on the grass. I swore that if I ever came across the cat again, I would kill it if I could. Apart from anything else, it presented a threat to the rest of my bird collection. But my mourning for Hiawatha was cut short by the arrival in our midst of something slightly more exotic than a hoopoe, and much more trouble. Larry had suddenly announced that he was going to stay with some friends of his in Athens and do some research work. After the flurry of his departure, tranquility descended on the villa. Leslie spent most of his time pottering about with a gun, and Margot, who at that moment was not engaged in any hectic affair of the heart, had taken up soap sculpture. Ensconced in the attic, she was producing somewhat lopsided and slippery pieces of sculpture out of an acrid-smelling yellow soap, and appeared in a flowered smock and an artistic trance, and appearing in a flowered smock and an artistic trance at mealtimes. Mother, seizing on this unexpected period of calm, decided to do a job that had long wanted doing. Oh, it's raining. It's raining, birdie boys. It's raining. The previous year had been an exceptionally good one for fruit, and Mother had spent hours preparing various jams and chutneys, some from her grandmother's recipes from India, dating back to the early 1800s. Everything went fine, and the big cool larder was aglint with battalions of bottles. Unfortunately, during a particularly savage storm in the winter, the larder roof had leaked, and in consequence, Mother had come down one morning and found all the labels had come off. She was faced with several hundred jars, the contents of which were difficult to identify unless you opened the jar. Now, given a moment's respite by her family, she decided to do this necessary job. Since it involved tasting, I offered to help. Between us we had got some 150 jars of preserves on the kitchen table, armed ourselves with spoons and new labels, and were just about to start on the mammoth tasting when Spiro arrived. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Durrells. Good afternoon, Master Jerry's," he rumbled, lumbering into the kitchen like a chestnut-brown dinosaur. "I got the telegrams for you, Mrs. Durrells." "A telegram, Spiro?" Mother quavered. "Who from, I wonder? I hope it's not bad news." "No, don't you worry. It's not bad news, Mrs. Durrells," he said, handing her the telegram. "I got the man in the post office to read it to me. It's from Master Larry's." "Oh dear," said Mother with foreboding. The telegram said simply, "Forgot to tell you, Prince Gigi Boy arriving 11th. Short stay. Athens wonderful. Love, Larry." "Really, Larry is the most annoying creature," Mother exclaimed angrily. "What does he go and invite a prince for? He knows we haven't got the right rooms for royalty, and he won't be here to entertain him. What am I supposed to do with a prince?" She gazed at us in a distraught fashion, but neither Spiro nor I could give her any intelligent advice. We could not even telegraph Larry, and demand his return, for, characteristically, he had gone off and omitted to give us his friend's address. "The 11th is tomorrow, isn't it? He'll be coming on to the boat from Brindisi, I expect. Spiro, would you meet him and bring him out? And will you bring some lamb for lunch? Jerry, go and tell Margot to put some flowers in the spare room and to make sure the dogs haven't put any fleas in there. And tell Leslie he must go down to the village and tell Red Spiro we want some fish. Really, it's too bad of Larry. I shall give him a piece of my mind when he gets back. I can't be bothered with entertaining princes at my age." Mother bustled angrily and aimlessly around the kitchen, banging saucepans and frying pans about. "I'll bring you some of my dahlias for the tables. Do you want any champagne?" asked Spiro, who obviously felt that the prince should be treated properly. "No. If he thinks I'm paying £1 a bottle for champagne, he's mistaken. He can just drink ouzo and wine like the rest of us, prince or no prince," said Mother firmly, and then added, "Well, I suppose you'd better bring a crate. We needn't give him any, and it always comes in useful." "Don't you worries, Mrs. Durrells," said Spiro comfortingly. "I fixes anything you wants. You wants, I gets the king's butler again." "Sorry, you wants I gets the king's butler again, ? The king's butler, an ancient and aristocratic old boy, was dragged out of retirement by Spiro every time we had a big party. No, Spiro, we're not going to go to a lot of trouble. After all, he's coming unexpectedly, so he'll just have to take us as he finds us. He'll just have to have potluck and mucker. And if he doesn't like it, well, it's just too bad, said Mother, shelling peas with trembling hands and dropping more on the floor than into the colander. And Jerry, go and ask Margot if she could run up those new curtains for the dining room. The materials in my bedroom. The old ones don't look the same since Les set fire to them. So the villa was transformed into a hive of activity. The wooden floor of the spare room was scrubbed until it was a pale cream colour, just in case the dogs had put any fleas in there. Margot ran up the new curtains in a record time and did flower arrangements everywhere, and Leslie cleaned his guns and boat in case the prince should want to go shooting or yachting. Mother, scarlet with heat, trotted frantically around the kitchen making scones, cakes, apple turnovers and brandy snaps. Oh, I love brandy snaps and apple turnovers. Yum, 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 yummy. Stews, pies, jellies and trifles, which I also really love. I was merely told to remove all my animals from the veranda and to keep them under control, to go and have my hair cut and to make sure I put on a clean shirt. So the following day, all dressed up by Mother's orders, we sat on the veranda and waited patiently for the prince to be brought out to us by Spiro. "What's he a prince of?" asked Leslie. "Well, I don't really know," said Mother. "One of those small states the Maharajas have, I expect." "It's a very odd name, Gigi boy," said Margot. "Are you sure it's real?" "Of course it's real, dear," said Mother. "There are lots of Gigi boys in India. It's a very old family, like Smith," suggested Leslie. No, not nearly as common as that. No, the Gigi boys go right back in history. There must have been Gigi boys long before my grandparents went to India. His ancestors probably organised the mutiny, suggested Leslie with relish. "Let's ask him if his grandfather invented the black hole of Calcutta." "Oh yes, let's," said Margot. "Do you think he did? What was it?" "Leslie, dear, you shouldn't say things like that," said Mother. "After all, we must forgive and forget." "Forgive and forget what?" asked Leslie, bewildered, not having followed Mother's train of thought. "Everything," said Mother firmly, adding rather obscurely, "I'm sure they meant well." Before Leslie could investigate this further, the car roared up the drive and drew up below the veranda with an impressive squeal of brakes. Sitting in the back, dressed in black and with a beautifully arranged turban as white as a snowdrop bud, sat a slender diminutive Indian with enormous glittering almond-shaped eyes that were like pools of liquid agate, fringed with eyelashes as thick as a carpet. He opened the door deftly and leapt out of the car. His smile of welcome was like a lightning flash of white in his brown face. "Well, well, here we are at last," he cried excitedly, spreading his slender brown hands like butterfly wings and dancing up onto the veranda. "You must be Mrs. Durrell, of course. Such charm. You are the hunter of the family, Leslie, and Margot, the beauty of the island, without doubt. And Jerry, the savant, the naturalist par excellence. I can't tell you how hot it makes me to meet you all." "Oh, well, yes. We're delighted to meet you, Your Highness," Mother began. Gigi boy uttered a yelp and slapped his forehead. "Dish and damnation," he said. "My foolish name again. My dear Mrs. Durrell, how can I apologize? Prince is my Christian name, a whim on my mother's part to make our humble family royal. You understand? A mother's love, Dream son will aspire to golden heights, huh? No, poor woman. We must forgive her, huh? I am plain Prince Gigi boy at your service." "Oh," said Mother, who, having geared herself to cope with royalty, felt somewhat let down. "Well, what do we call you?" "My friends, of which I have an inordinate number," said the new arrival earnestly, "call me Gigi. I do hope that you will call me the same." So Gigi took up residence, and during the short time he was there created greater havoc and endeared himself more to us than any other guest we had had. With his pedantic English, his earnest, gentle air, he took such a deep and genuine interest in everything and everyone that he was irresistible. For Lucrezia, he had various pots of evil-smelling, sticky substances with which to anoint her numerous imaginary aches and pains. With Leslie, he would discuss in grave detail the state of hunting in the world and give graphic and probably untrue stories of tiger and wild boar hunts he had been on. For Margot, he procured some lengths of cloth and made them into saris and taught her how to wear them. As Spiro, he would enthrall with tales of the riches and mysteriousness of the East, of bejeweled elephants wrestling with each other, and maharajas worth their weight in precious stones. He was proficient with his pencil, and as well as taking a deep and genuine interest in all my pets, completely won me over by doing delicate little sketches of them for me to stick in my natural history diary, a document which was, to my mind, considerably more important than a combination of the Magna Carta, the Book of Kells, and the Gutenberg Bible, and was treated as such by our discerning guest. But it was Mother that Gigi really charmed into submission, for not only did he have endless, mouth-watering recipes for her to write down, and a fund of folklore and ghost stories. Oh, how delightful. I would love that. But his visit enabled Mother to talk endlessly about India, where she had been born and bred, and which she considered her real home. Just going to have another little piece of chocolate. The rain has already stopped. Can you believe it? Hopefully we get another sprinkling of it though, because it's been really hot today. In the evening, we would sit long over our meal at the big creaking dining table. The clusters of oil lamps in the corners of the great room, blooming in pools of primrose yellow light. The drifts of small moths fluttering against them like snow. The dogs lying in the doorway. Now their numbers had risen to 4. They were never allowed into the dining room. Would yawn and sigh at our tardiness, but we would be oblivious to them. Outside, the ringing cries of the crickets and the crackle of tree frogs would make the velvety night alive. In the lamplight, Gigi's eyes would seem to grow bigger and blacker than an owl's, with a strange liquid fire in them. Of course, in your day, Mrs. Durrell, things were different. You did not intermingle. No, strict segregation, wasn't it? But now things are better. At first, the Maharajas got their toes in the doors, and nowadays even some of us humbler Indians are allowed to intermingle, and thus accrue some of the advantages of civilization, said Gigi one evening. In my day, said Mother, it was the Eurasians that they felt most strongly about. We wouldn't be allowed even to play with them by my grandmother. Of course we always did. Children are singularly insensitive to the correct civilized behaviour, said Gigi, smiling. Still there were some difficulties at first, you know. Rome, however, was not built in a day. Did you hear about the Babu in my town who was invited to the ball? No, what happened? Well, he saw that after the gentlemen had finished dancing with the ladies, they escorted them back to their chairs and fanned them with the ladies' fan. So, having conducted a sprightly waltz with a European lady of some eminence, he conducted her safely back to her seat, took her fan and said, "Madam, may I make wind in your face?" I shouldn't laugh. That sounds the sort of thing Spiro would say, said Leslie. I remember once, said Mother, throwing herself into reminiscence with pleasure, when my husband was chief engineer in Roorkee. We had the most terrible cyclone. Larry was only a baby. The house was a long, low one, and I remember we ran from room to room, trying to hold the doors shut against the wind. As we ran from room to room, the house simply collapsed behind us. We eventually ended up in the butler's pantry. But when we had the house repaired, the Babu contractor sent in a bill which was headed, "For repairs to chief engineer's backside." India must have been fascinating then, said Gigi, because unlike most Europeans, you were part of the country. Oh yes, said Mother. Even my grandmother was born there. When most people talked of home and meant England, when we said home, we meant India. You must have travelled extensively, said Gigi enviously. I suppose you've seen more of my country than I have? Practically every nook and cranny, said Mother. My husband being a civil engineer, of course he had to travel. I always used to go with him. If he had to build a bridge or a railway right out in the jungle, I'd go with him and we'd camp. That must have been fun, said Leslie enthusiastically. A primitive life under canvas. Oh, it was. I loved the simple life in camp. I remember the elephants used to go ahead with the marquees, the carpets and the furniture. And then the servants would follow in the ox carts with the linen and silver. You call that camping? Interrupted Leslie incredulously. With marquees? We only had 3, said Mother defensively. A bedroom, dining room and a drawing room. And they were built with fitted carpets anyway. Well, I don't call that camping, said Leslie. It was, said Mother. It was right out in the jungle. We could hear tigers and all the servants were terrified. Once they killed a cobra under the dining table. And that was before Jerry was born, said Margot. You should write your memoirs, Mrs. Durrell, said Gigi gravely. Oh no, laughed Mother. I couldn't possibly write. Besides, what would I call it? How about It Took 14 Elephants, suggested Leslie. Or Through the Forest on a Fitted Carpet, suggested Gigi. The trouble with you boys is you never take anything seriously, said Mother severely. Yes, said Margot. I think it was jolly brave of Mother to camp with only 3 marquees and cobras and things. Camping, snorted Leslie derisively. Well, it was camping, dear. I remember once one of the elephants went astray, and we had no clean sheets for 3 days. Your father was most annoyed. I never knew anything as big as an elephant could go astray, said Gigi, surprised. Oh yes, said Leslie, easily mislaid elephants. Well, anyway, you wouldn't like it if you were without clean sheets, said Mother with dignity. Of course they wouldn't, put in Margot, and I think it's fun hearing about ancient India, even if they don't. But I do find it most educational, Gigi protested. You're always making fun of Mother, said Margot. I don't see why you should be so superior just because your father invented the black hole or whatever it was. It says much for Gigi that he almost fell under the table laughing, and all the dogs started barking vociferously at his mirth. But probably the most endearing thing about Gigi was his intense enthusiasm for anything he happened to take up, even when it was demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that he could not achieve success in that sphere of activity. When Larry had first met him, he had decided to be one of India's greatest poets, and with the aid of a compatriot who spoke little English, he was my compositor, Gigi explained. He started a magazine called Poetry for the People, or Pottery for the People, spelt P-E-E-P-L-E, or Potery for the P-O-P-O-P, depending on whether Gigi was supervising his compositor or not. This little magazine was published once a month, with contributions from everyone that Gigi knew, and some of them made strange reading, as we discovered, for Gigi's luggage was full of blurred copies of his magazine, which he would hand out to anyone who displayed interest. Ah, there you are. What you doing, Cammy? You're doing some flying from cage to cage. Good boy. And what's the little munchkin doing? Bo! Oh, Bo! Cammy and Bo. Perusing them, we discovered such interesting items as The Pottery of Stiffened Splendour, a critical evaluation. Gigi's compositor friend apparently believed in printing words as they sounded, or rather, as they sounded to him at that moment. Thus there was a long and eulogistic article by Gigi on Tis Eliot, Pot Supreme. The compositor's novel spelling combined with the misprints naturally to be found in such a work made reading it a pleasurable though puzzling occupation. Why not a black pot laureate, spelt W-H-Y-E, not N-O-T-T-E, and laureate, L-O-R-A-T. But he means, why not a black poet laureate? For example, posed an almost unanswerable question, written apparently in Chaucerian English, while the article entitled Roy Cam Bill, Ball Fighter and Pot made one wonder what poetry was coming to. However, Gigi was undaunted by the difficulties, including the fact that his compositor never pronounced the letter H, and so never used it. His latest enthusiasm was to start a second magazine, printed on the same hand press with the same carefree compositor, devoted to his newly evolved study of what he called Fakirs. I'd raised one eyebrow, but I can't quite do it. Fakyo, Fakyo, which was described in the first copy of Fakyo for All as an amalgam, spelt G-U-M, of the mysterious, spelt M-I-S-T, East, bringing together the best of yoga and Fakirism, giving details and teaching people our. Teaching meaning teaching, and our how without the H. Mother was greatly intrigued by Fakyo until Gigi started to practice it. Clad in a loincloth and covered in ashes, he meditated for hours on the veranda, or else walked in a well-simulated trance through the house, leaving a trail of ashes behind him. He fasted religiously for 4 days, and on the 5th day worried Mother to death by fainting and falling down the stairs. "Really, Gigi," said Mother crossly, "this has got to stop. There's not enough of you to fast." Putting him to bed, Mother concocted huge strength-giving curries, only to have Gigi complain that there was no Bombay duck. The fried fish was such a pungent and attractive addition to any curry. "But you can't get it here, Gigi. I've tried," Mother protested. Drank all my bloody water again. Oh well. Gigi waved his hands like pale bronze moths against the white of the sheet. A Fakyo tells that in life there is a substitute for everything, he said firmly. When he recovered sufficiently, he paid a visit to the fish market in the town and purchased a vast quantity of fresh sardines. He came back from a pleasant morning's shopping in the town to find the kitchen and its environs untenable. Gigi, brandishing a knife with which he was gutting the fish before laying them out in the sun to dry outside the back door, was doing battle with what appeared to be every fly, bluebottle and wasp in the Ionian Islands. He had been stung about 5 times, and one eye was swollen and partially closed. The smell of rapidly decomposing sardines was overwhelming, and the kitchen floor and table were covered in snow drifts of silver fish skin and bits of entrails. It was only when Mother showed him the article on Bombay duck in the Encyclopedia Britannica that he reluctantly gave up the idea of sardines as a substitute. It took Mother 2 days with buckets of water and disinfectant to rid the kitchen of the smell, and even then there was still the odd wasp blundering in, hopefully, through the windows. "Perhaps I'd better find you a substitute in Athens or Istanbul," said Gigi hopefully. "I was thinking that lobster baked and crushed to a powder." "I wouldn't worry about it, Gigi dear," said Mother hurriedly. We've done without it for some time now, and it hasn't hurt us. Gigi was en route for Persia via Turkey in order to visit an Indian fakir practicing there. From him I shall learn many things to add to Fakyo, said Gigi. He is a great man. In particular, he is a great exponent of holding his breath and going into a trance. He was once buried for 120 days. Extraordinary, said Mother, deeply interested. You mean buried alive? Asked Margot. Buried alive for 120 days? How horrible! It doesn't seem natural somehow. But he's in a trance, dear Margot. He feels nothing, explained Gigi. I'm not so sure, said Mother musingly. That's why I want to be cremated, you know, just in case I happen to slip into a trance and no one notices. Don't be ridiculous, Mother, said Leslie. It's not ridiculous, replied Mother firmly. People are so careless nowadays. And what else does a fakir do? Asked Margot. Can he make mango trees grow from seeds? You know, straight away? I saw them do that in Simla once. That is simple conjuring, said Gigi. What Andrawati does is much more complex. He's an expert in levitation, for example, and it is one of the things I want to see him about. But I thought levitation was card tricks, said Margot. No, said Leslie. It's floating about, a sort of flying, isn't it, Gigi? Yes, said Gigi. A wonderful ability. A lot of the early Christian saints could do it. I myself have not reached that stage of proficiency. That is why I want to study under Andrawati. How lovely to be able to float like a bird, said Margot delightedly. What fun you could have. I believe it to be a truly tremendous experience, said Gigi, his eyes shining. You feel as if you are being lifted towards heaven. The following day, just before lunch, Margot came rushing into the drawing room in a state of panic. Come quickly, she screamed. Gigi's committing suicide. We hurried outside, and there, perched on the windowsill of his room, was Gigi, clad in nothing but a loincloth. He's got one of those trances again, said Margot, as if it were an infectious disease. Kind of is. See also mesmerism, which Adolf Hitler was rather good at. For the morons that tried to mesmerize us all into injecting ourselves with a safe and effective. Mass formation psychosis is a form of mesmerism by the goddess. Even Rudyard Kipling wrote, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, you'll be a man, my son. Thank God I've was a great fan of that entire poem. Kept me sane over the last 7 years. 6 years. What have you? Mother straightened her glasses and stared upwards. Gigi started to sway gently. "Go upstairs and grab him, Les," said Mother. "Quickly, I'll keep him talking." The fact that Gigi was raptly silent did not occur to her. Leslie rushed into the house. Mother cleared her throat. "Are you singing a song? Oh, what a wonderful song it is. You're a songbird. You're an Indian ringneck singing an Indian ringneck song. I heard you." "Gigi dear," she fluted, "I don't think it's very wise of you to be up there. Why don't you come down and have lunch?" Gigi did come down, but not quite as Mother intended. He stepped gaily out into space and, accompanied by horrified cries from Mother and Margot, fell earthwards. He crashed into the grapevine some 10 feet beneath his window, sending a shower of grapes onto the flagstones. Fortunately, the vine was an old sinewy one, and it held Gigi's slight weight. "My God!" he shouted. "Where am I?" "In the grapevine," screamed Margot excitedly. "You agitated yourself there." "Don't move till we get a ladder," said Mother faintly. We got a ladder and extricated the tousled Gigi from the depths of the vine. He was bruised and scratched, but otherwise unhurt. Everyone's nerves were soothed with brandy, and we sat down to a late lunch. By the time evening came, Gigi had convinced himself that he had in fact succeeded in levitating himself. "If my toes had not become entangled in the pernicious vine, I would have gone sailing around the house," he said, lying bandaged but happy on the sofa. What an achievement! "Yes, well, I'll be happy if you don't practice while you are staying here," said Mother. "My nerves won't stand it." "I will come back from Persia and spend my birthday with you, my dear Mrs. Durrell," said Gigi, "and I will then report progress." "Well, I don't want a repetition of today," said Mother severely. "You might have killed yourself." 2 days later, Gigi boy, still covered with sticking plaster but undaunted, left for Persia. "I wonder if he will come back for his birthday," said Margot. "If he does, let's have a special party for him." "Yes, that's a good idea," said Mother. "He's such a sweet boy, but so erratic, so unsafe." "Well, he's the only guest we've had who could really be described as having paid a flying visit," said Leslie. And thus concludes chapter 5, and I shall be back tomorrow with chapter 6. 6. Only a few chapters left of this delightful book. So, there we go, people of Earth. Tomorrow's chapter is titled The Royal Occasion. Kings and bears oft worry their keepers, a Scottish proverb. But we shall continue that. Where's my, here it is, bookmark. We shall continue tomorrow. Hasta mañana, till we meet again, people of Earth. Have a beautiful afternoon, evening, morning, night, wherever you are in the space-time continuum. I wish the bloody weather would cool down. It's near the end of February. I guess March can be a humid month too. One more month of hell and planet hellscape. Hopefully by April it'll start cooling down a bit, being a bit more pleasant. So, Goddess bless. Have a beautiful existence wherever you are. Bye for now.